Just look around. You got the mountains, you got the most beautiful city in the whole entire country. The university is absolutely, looks like it's out of a storybook. It's just beautiful. People are incredibly genuine and extremely nice. It's just a place that obviously I'd want my kids to go to school. And it sells itself. You don't have to sell anything about this place. You just got to get them here. You know, the old field of dreams. Yeah. Build it and they will come. It's already built.
Doesn't have to be perfect, ain't gonna be perfect. We go compete for 60 freaking minutes. All right, enjoy the opportunity, enjoy the environment, and then go play our butts off, play for one another, and have a hell of a lot of fun. Everybody got me?
Yes,
all right.
Just making sure that the little things are taken care of, like getting our cleats in the dirt and just playing.
What we have to do is make sure that we got our cleats on the ground before the ball is snapped. I think that's the key to the game, and make sure that
just get our cleats in the ground, execute calls, the urgency of communicating and getting lined up.
Yeah, you got to get your cleats in the ground and you got to go play.
Oh my God, we should leave it at that.
Okay.
We should close with that. That is the mind blower of mind blowers.
Good.
Do you remember when we fell in love? I remember, don't worry. Do you remember? I remember how it all began. How could I ever forget? It's the first time. Do you remember? I can feel it. I can feel it. I can feel it coming in the air now. I can feel it. I can feel it, I can feel it, it's coming in the air now. Oh, we fell in love. You remember the time? How could I ever forget? You remember the time? Oh, we fell in love. You remember the time? How could I ever forget? Coming in the air now.
Welcome to the Talkin VAWLS Network. My name is Boogie Bentley. Got a fun show. Who's not fired up right now in the world of recruiting? I mean, come on. Boo Carter, Jordan Burns, Max Anderson pulls the trigger about 3 hours before we go live. We got so much to talk about, but look, I'm laughing. I laugh now every time I watch the intro. Every time I see Eric Kane's little intro there in the clip, I'm laughing because I look bored out of my mind talking to Eric. But I was looking at his reaction. That's how it got into the intro. Evidently, Kaner was boring me to death. I laugh every time I see that. But look, guys, we got a fun show. We got Dell Dowden in the house. He is the lead recruiting reporter for the Tennessee Rivals site. He's going to come on and break down some of this recruiting that is going on right now. He's going to talk about last weekend, going to talk about the big weekend coming up. That's the thing. The dominoes are starting to fall. We got so much to talk about, so much to get into. Let's run down the chat. Let's see who's hanging out. Brad was here bright and early. He calls himself a 5-star moderator. I think ESPN must have given him that rating because I think it's way off. Pit Boss is in the house. What's up, my friend? Matt's here. Matt Dummett is in the house. What is up, buddy? Lee Honda Hilt is here. Man, I wish I could tune into the stream, but I'm working. So Lee Honda Hilt is not here. He came in, said hello. He is gone. Bubbles is in the house. What is up, Bubbles? Robert Clark is here. Pokey Dave is in the house. Says hello. How is Vol Nation doing? We're doing fine. How about yourself? Crystal Free is here. Tyler Pollock is in the house. Let's see. Let me run it down. Who else we got? Larry Dalton is here. Go Big Orange. We are on a roll. David Collins in the house. Kelly Goodwin is here. What is up, Ball family? Who else we got? Faulkner in the house. Good to see Faulkner here. The kid is in the house. What's up, Elijah? Let's see. Aiden Stills is here. Says, what's up, Boog? Richard Smith is in the house. Says, Dell is the best in the business. Proud of you, cuz. Did Dell create a fake account? He's in the chat talking to himself. What is going on here? We got to straighten this out. We got Joey Carroll dropping a $5 super chat. That's the entry fee to the Boom Boom Room. Says, who's next? That's the question, and we're going to find out coming up here in just a second. Appreciate that super chat. Aiden Stills becomes a member of the channel. Talkin VAWLS Gold. Thank you for that. You want to support what we're building around here, you can do that. Hit the join button down below. You can give $1. You can give more. You get access to fan call-in shows, custom Talkin VAWLS emojis, all kinds of fun stuff, and you want to support what we are doing, keep the lights on around here, hit that join button. We would appreciate it. It's also pinned to the top of the chat. Nelson's in the house. What is up, buddy? I've been talking to Nelson all week, man, trying to figure out who's going to pull the trigger, when, and how. Man, trying to get a grasp on this stuff. But without further ado, let's get down to it. Let's talk about it. Let's get Dell on the show. Dell Dowden, lead recruiting reporter for the Tennessee Rival SOT. What is going on, my friend? Welcome to the Talkin VAWLS Network.
Appreciate you for having me on. Another busy day in the recruiting life of Tennessee football.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking yesterday, you and I, demon back and forth on Twitter, trying to figure out Max Anderson. And then all of a sudden, Jordan Burns throws a wrench in everybody's right into the what's the saying? Threw a wrench in what? See, I try to use these phrases, these sayings, and they always get lost on me. Throw a wrench into what?
I would just say throw a stone in the pond.
Yeah, that's without when you're gonna make a mistake, just completely change directions.
There you go.
Completely change directions. But the bottom line is, Dale, man, Tennessee is heating up right now. Let's kick things off with the news from about 3 hours ago. 4-star offensive lineman Max Anderson in the boat, continues that momentum. What do you think about that commitment? A lot of people saying interior offensive lineman. Some people saying offensive tackle. Ultimately, I told Nelson today, I said, I don't care. Let's get the bodies in the boat, and we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely possesses a frame where he could play either tackle or slide in at guard. The frame is typically kind of what you would see at tackle, but with his technique and some of his abilities, that's what makes it, kind of interesting to see if they don't move him inside, because he's just as dominant on the inside as he probably could be at tackle. And getting a 4-star offensive lineman like that kind of, you can kind of look at him as a plug-and-play guy, somebody that could potentially see the field very early in their career just by, their sheer knowledge and capability of what they can do on the field. In terms of the recruiting itself, big piece for Glenn Ellerby. A lot of fans kind of give him a lot of, slack that he's always getting the 3-star linemen and can't get the elite guys. This is a big one. You touched on it earlier. His top 8 was full of playoff contending teams. So this wasn't like, Tennessee beat out, 2 or 3 other Power 5s and then a bunch of, smaller schools. They were in there with, the Oklahomas, Alabama, you name them. They were pretty much in that top 8. Just a big perception key for Glenn Ellerby, just proving that he can land, a 4-star lineman. The big thing for me with Ellerby, and again, you touched on this as well earlier, seeing the development that he had with Darnell Wright, getting him into the league. And a lot of people, talking this year that Spraggins could be that next guy. Even if you see Ellerby go a few classes and he doesn't get, a lot of the big targets they're getting, if he could continue to develop that talent, that's eventually going to catch the eye of some of these elite guys. And they're going to sit there and think, if he can do this with a 2 or 3-star guy, what could he do with me?
I don't want to bury the lead. I said we were going to follow a format, but I want to continue talking about this offensive line just a little bit, because you brought up, Darnell Wright, and he was in town this past weekend. Again, all the talent that was in town, but I want to stick with the offensive line, because you had a couple of big targets in Daniel Calhoun was here, and Darnell Wright had the opportunity to sit down with him, give him the pitch, give him the recruiting pitch, sell Glenn Ellerby. He is going to be visiting. Daniel Calhoun's got Texas coming up this weekend. A lot of talk that the top 3 are Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. But then you also had Marquez Easley in town officially. So you've got 2 big-time 4-star offensive tackle prospects on campus. Darnell right there to give them the pitch. What do you think the offensive line recruiting looks like with Calhoun, with Easley. If they miss the boat there, they got to come down the recruiting board just a little bit. I know they're in a good spot with Ronan O'Connell, but what do you think about that with those two guys being in town this past weekend? How do you think those visits played out?
Well, it's huge for one. Calhoun definitely one of the more elite offensive linemen in the country. And you're right, a lot of people have believed for a long time that it was pretty much almost a three-team race with Bama and Georgia even slightly might be out in front, with Tennessee being in that third spot. But again, as you mentioned earlier, he continues to show up. And if you continue to give a staff like this the opportunities to close in on you, again, not saying it's a sure thing, but we've seen, like you said, this staff is the biggest word you hear is genuine, authentic. You continue to give that staff time to land, somebody like Calhoun, you never know what could happen. But to answer your question, another guy that was in on campus too, or I think is actually coming in this week, is the four-star Bennett Warren, who is another offensive lineman out of Texas. I think Tennessee may have offered him back prior to spring. I want to say maybe February or March is when they offered him. And it seems like he's had a high interest in Tennessee pretty much ever since. He kind of included them, and I think he even did a trim of his list and included them before he ever even, had visited Knoxville. Another thing with the Marquez Easley kid, he has a very interesting story with Kevin Pendleton, the assistant offensive line coach at Tennessee. Pendleton was a player at Missouri on the offensive line for Ellerby and the offense led by Coach Heupel at Missouri. And when he graduated, he became a grad assistant. He actually is the guy who extended Easley his first offer. And then so when he rejoins Heupel and Ellerby at Tennessee, he brings Easley's film to the table and gets the green light to offer him from Tennessee. As I know when I interviewed him about his offer, that was a big deal for him, was that Pendleton being the one that gave him his first ever offer and then moving to another school and a powerhouse school and then giving him another offer. He said so that carried a lot of weight for him. So for me, I think that's a guy right there too that a lot of people need to look a little bit more at, is the Marquez Easley kid.
I think it's interesting because as fans, a lot of times it's always NIL. Everything is NIL.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of these kids being recruited is fishing for NIL. But those type of stories right there, just confirmation, it's more than NIL. It's a relationship business. Let me get through a couple of these super chats real quick. Dustin Sellers has been a member of this channel for 29 months. He says, y'all buck up these memberships. Here is my milestone. 29 months that Dustin's been a member of the channel. We appreciate that. Seth's in the house at the 4 for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Says, what is up, everybody? Short time, no see. Yeah, I think I've streamed about 9 hours the last 2 nights, but we're going to keep this party rolling. Dustin, for $10, that ain't cheap. Appreciate that, Dustin. Good to see us take a Texas recruit from Oklahoma, future SEC opponent. Appreciate that, $10, Dustin. Also, Negaval for $5. Can we officially change our status to 4-star U yet, at least? Door fee, thank you for the super chat, Negaval. Also, shout out to Eddie Crossland for becoming a member of the channel at Emoji Access, guys. That's just $1 a month. Let's ramp up those memberships. You guys keep the lights on around here. Going back to the super chat here from Negaval, it's kind of funny because so many people wanted to say, 3-star U. That was always the comment. I knew that's the comment I was going to get when I made a video on a 3-star kid. I knew it. It's the world of the internet. That's what's always was going to happen. But this recruiting class of 2024, I'm going to pull it up and get it out here on the screen, courtesy of TennesseeRivals.com. But when you look down through that list, Dell, there's a lot of 4-star prospects on there. But the question for you, what does this coaching staff have to do in the class of 24 to take this thing up to a top 5 class? Coming out of the last weekend, getting the commitments from Boo Carter, from Jordan Burns, from Max Anderson, 4-star wide receiver Braylon Staley out of Aiken, South Carolina, a guy that seems to be trending to Tennessee, supposed to make a decision around June 29th, 30th, somewhere like that. 4-star linebacker Edwin Spillman. He can talk Ohio State all he wants. He's going to be a Vol. That's what I believe. But what do they have to do to get this thing to a top 5 class? How many of the big fish, the guys like Winery, Cam Franklin, Mike Matthews, Ron Wingo, we talked already about Calhoun and Easley. Number one, Dell, do you think it's possible for this coaching staff to get to a top 5 class? And if it is, what do they need to do?
Well, it's definitely possible. You factor in, like you said, relationships and NIL. When you're factoring both of those in, Tennessee has to be in a good shape with a lot of people. Again, from the relationship side of being authentic and genuine with people, and then you've got the NIL collection agencies for Tennessee that essentially are almost second to none. I think the biggest key for this class is the fact that we've already had some of these top guys essentially shut the recruitment down. You had Caleb Beasley, announce his was shut down. Jonathan Eccles went to Twitter and, reaffirmed that he's locked in, and you see multiple guys doing that. So you look at where they're at now. I know for us, I think they have the ninth overall class, according to Rivals. And, you mentioned some of these big targets that are left. They don't have to go, 100 on all of them. They get two or three of them. You could easily see this class bump up, to a top 7, top 5. I mean, it's not too far fetched. I mean, there is still work to do, but it's definitely on the table to be taken by the staff if they want it.
Well, let's circle back around. We're going to come back. We're going to continue to talk recruiting. Dell Dowden, lead recruiting reporter for Tennessee Rivals. Guys, go check them out. Vol Report. You can find them on Twitter, or you can just go to TennesseeRivals.com. The links are all in the description, where you can keep up with Dell on Twitter, where you can go check out what he is doing with the Tennessee Rivals site. So make sure you go check that out. Crystal in the house for 5. Thank you for the super chat. Working on my next book. So I won't be on long tonight, but door is always a must, y'all. Pay those door fees. Crystal says, even if you're not going to stick around, pay the door fee. We appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. Also, thank you for Crystal and Negaball put together some decals, some Talkin VAWLS decals and stickers for you guys. The link to that is also in the description. We're going to change gears here just for a second. Guys, do me a favor, smash the thumbs up, all that fun stuff. Share out the video. You guys know the drill by now. But Dell, I want to talk a little bit about you, who you are. I know you're a Tennessee fan. Sometimes that's the beauty when you work in the media and you get to cover a team that you like. What's your Tennessee story? Are you a diehard Vol? Are you a diehard media guy? Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so you're gonna get some information that not many people have, just because I try to keep the fanship, aside when doing the job. That way you can do, a legit good job and not have your blinders on for the most part. But yes, grew up a Tennessee fan. I was actually 7 years old during the '98 championship win. So I've seen the good and I've seen a lot of the bad as well. So it's definitely nice to see this circling back around to what it kind of looked like when I was younger and in elementary and middle school. Um, Actually, I started in the media in 2016. Got my first media gig offer from Sleeper Recruit, Rodney Tillman out of North Augusta, South Carolina. Uh, kind of had the job fall in my lap, didn't know much of what I was doing. That took place after, kind of following recruiting for 2 years on the Twitter scene. Made a few connections with people that are kind of big name people in the media that I had no idea who they were at the time. But just to give you an idea, Tony Ballard, who is the CEO of Hustle Inc. 7-on-7, who Mike Matthews actually plays for. He was behind Shea Patterson, Harrison Bailey. He's a big quarterback trainer in the state of Georgia. Kenyatta Watson, who was essentially, I guess you could say, a handler at the time, helping kids get exposed, to colleges and helping them get offers. Now coaches at Georgia Tech. And then probably the biggest one was Eric Richards, big time guy with the All-American Bowl out in San Antonio, Texas. Big, guy up the chain for the FBU Camp Series. Those are guys that I kind of had as role models when I first broke in, because I had no idea what I was doing. So reaching out to them, picking their brain, getting advice from them was probably the biggest ace I had in my back pocket at the time. Then throughout the years, kind of connected with a few different Tennessee outlets just to be able to kind of keep up with the Tennessee recruitment. And then met a guy by the name of Matt Ray, who many may know is now with VolQuest over on 3. Great pickup by Hubs and Price to grab Matt. Matt's definitely one of the hardest working guys I've ever been around. And I benefited so much being around him because, that makes your job easier when you see somebody that's willing to work the way that he did and still does. Matt and myself, we both have day jobs on top of what we do as far as media wise. So I kind of linked up with him roughly 2018, and then joined with him and started covering Tennessee recruiting for the 2019 football season. We were under his brand, VR2, which stood for Vol Recruiting Reports. We worked that for a year, me and Matt and another guy named Brandon Martin. And we worked that 2019 season. And then in March of 2020, we were signing contracts to take over the Volunteer Country site at Sports Illustrated. So we worked that from 2020 all the way throughout the 2022 season. Um, Matt got offered by On3, and he took that one. And then I went and joined Vol Report at Rivals, and here we are.
You know, you're funny. You talked about starting it and not having a clue what you were doing, but that's the beauty of it, man. Is learning your craft and working your way up. And that's what I did with YouTube. Man, people come to the channel now and they're like, "Oh, wow, this is awesome. You guys are great. What you guys do is so much fun." And I sucked at this for a long time, like 7-8 years. I sucked at YouTube, and then starting to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's just neat to watch you guys work your way up, right? And now for Matt to go to On3, you to go to Rivals. I mean, there's 4 big recruiting platforms, technically 3. I think ESPN's an absolute joke. Like you go to their recruiting coverage and there's nothing. So, you know, to see you guys come along, I think Matt's great. I think he does a really good job. But from the fan perspective, from the fan side of things, I always ask people, like, what's that moment? Like when you think back to when you first started pulling for Tennessee, like for me, it was Andy Kelly. I'm a little bit older than you. Andy Kelly playing quarterback for Tennessee. I wanted to go to the backyard and I want to put on a number 8 jersey and pretend to be Andy Kelly. Like what was that big fanhood moment for you?
I would have to say, I mean, even though I got to see kind of the tail end of the Peyton era, I was still a bit young to kind of understand what I was watching. So over the next couple of years, it was, I mean, seeing them go from guys at the running back position, like from Jamal Lewis and Travis Henry, you know, then over the next few years, you end up getting, you know, the Jabari Davis, the Cedric Houston, and the Gerald Riggs. You know, so when I'm in middle school, you know, those were the 3 running backs. You know, the Gator Killer that everybody refers to Jabari Davis as. You know, that was a fun time growing up watching that. Those were 3 guys right there that I really really paid attention to and were big fans of. And honestly, to make the fan side and the work side connect, that was probably one of my probably I don't want to say that. Probably one of my biggest moments was actually going, and I still try to, as much as I can, go and try to cover some of the Legends of Tennessee football camps that they run during the summer. And just, I remember my first time doing it, I'm sitting there and I'm just looking around, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like I'm literally sitting here working alongside guys that I grew up essentially idolizing.
Yeah, it's weird,
And it's
man.
just like it's a surreal moment. It really puts a lot of things in perspective, and just being able to to call some of those guys. Like I talk to Jabari every so often. I see Riggs quite a bit. You know, he's down in the area. He's coaching at Cleveland High School now. So yeah, so like having relationships with those guys on a personal level. You know, after growing up watching them on TV and just thinking they were just these football superheroes, pretty much. It's really a cool moment.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to, well, this is a good question. Trev in the chat says, question for Dell, you see any of the Tennessee 4-star recruits becoming 5 stars? Heck, even add some to that. Do you see anybody bumping? I know, Marcus Gorey Jr. is a guy I think that just got bumped by On3. Maybe a lot of guys talking about, or was it Farouk? Farouk may have been the guy that got bumped. A lot of people talk about some of these offensive linemen like Gage Ginther. I know you guys over at Rivals already have him as a 4-star, but I think he's a guy that his stock is going to continue to go up. But any 4 stars you think become 5 stars?
Based on the rating that we have at Rivals, I wouldn't be surprised, to see possibly Boo Carter be bumped to a 5 at some point. Because when you look at his star rating, he's at a 4-star, and then you look at the little numerical number, he's at a 6.0. And that's typically 5. That's borderline 5-star status right there. So I think if that kid has another highly productive year, is what many is expecting of him, you could potentially see him bump to a 5-star. Looking at some of the other guys.
I don't know if you can see it on the screen or if it's too small. You got Jake.
Oh no, I can see it. Just trying to think, because some of these guys, when you're looking at their ratings and stuff, okay, Jordan Burns is another guy, a high-end 4-star guy, but he's deep in the talent pool that is the state of Georgia. So like, a guy like him that may potentially not get that bump, could potentially legitimately be a 5-star talent that's just a 4-star because they're so deep in that state. And
Yeah,
it's hard to get that, true in-depth analysis of that one kid when you're trying to cover everybody statewide. Um, I think a kid that could potentially bump to a 4-star is Jesse Perry. Um, I know again he's another in-state 3-star guy that people kind of, you know, again 3-star U comments. When you watch his film, that kid's technique and fundamentals, that there's a lot of upside to that kid. Moves his feet well, understands, staying in close, keeping the defender engaged while he's driving his feet. Um, I know he kind of comes from a small area, so that kind of probably plays into some of his lower rating just because he's not seeing the elite talent week in and week out. Uh, but I know that I think he could be worthy of him bumping from a 3 to a 4. And Marcus Gorey, I know you said the on 3 had already bumped him up. He's another guy that could potentially see a bump from a 3-star to a 4 from us. I went and kind of caught up with him a little bit while chasing the Boo Carter commitment story. He's a kid that just continues to develop and get better. Seeing him in the weight room, you can tell he's really, putting on some good weight, and it looks good on him. Then you watch his film from last year, and for me, I was actually talking to one of his strength coaches at Bradley Central 2 weeks ago, and I made the comment, that I had came out and seen a scrimmage with him. He had a pretty solid day, but then watching some highlights, as he progressed throughout the season, you could see that he turned it up a notch. And it's just like, and now knowing that Boo's there, that's just gonna, push him to get better, in its own. And that could potentially cause him to bump up as well. So even if it's not a lot of 4-stars bumping into 5s, you can still see some of these 3s bump into 4s, which still is going to affect the ranking in a positive manner.
Look, I know we're both in the business of stars. You cover recruiting. Of course, stars are important. If I put out a video and it has a 5-star versus a 4-star versus a 3-star, guess who pulls more views? It's the 5 stars. But in the grand scheme of things, in the world of football, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if this kid's a 5-star or a 4-star. I think what this coaching staff has done with player evaluation to this point speak volumes. Go back to the drama with Carnell Tate, right? And Nathan Laycock ends up being ranked higher when it's all said and done. Peyton Lewis, I don't care if he's a 4-star or a 5-star. The kid is a burner, and I like watching what I see on his highlight films. I think Jake Merklinger is a solid quarterback. I love the balls on that kid to come in and say, I don't care about Nico. I'm coming here to compete and play football. Jonathan Eccles, a guy that was at one point was a 5-star. So at the end of the day, I get it. It's fun. We enjoy it. Everybody in the chat enjoys it. But at the end of the day, I think this coaching staff has proven that they're well equipped to do a little player evaluation. WL Page 22 for 5. Thank you for the super chat. Doesn't have anything to say, just a tip in the tip jar. We appreciate that donation. Thank you for that. We've got 150 people watching live right now, guys. Smash the thumbs up. Hit share, man. Put this thing on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If MySpace is still a thing, put it there. Let somebody know we are live. We would greatly appreciate it. We're going to go about an hour tonight with Dell Dowden, the lead recruiting reporter for Tennessee Rivals. We're going to get right back into recruiting. I saw somebody in the chat ask about Cam Franklin. So that's what I want to talk about. Talk a little bit more about June 16th. Then we're going to move ahead to the big weekend coming up. Well, let's talk about those 5-star defensive linemen. Kamarion Franklin, Williams Winery, both in town on the 16th. What do you think of both of those guys coming out of the weekend?
I think both of them had a very solid trip. Franklin definitely coming in, I think, was probably the one that everybody was already watching because it seemed like he was already trending, especially with the little video where it seemed that he may have thrown up ball fingers. That may have been what that was. I've seen kids throw up multiple hand gestures that are very similar, and a lot of them do throw up that same exact hand sign. And some of them, I don't think that they understand what that means to the Vol fans. But also, with that being said, in this day and age, it's kind of hard not to know what that means. So I don't want to say that he was, trolling the fan base or anything like that. I think he was, probably feeling that in the moment. I know a lot more buzz began to pick up after it was announced that he had canceled his LSU visit. We had our guy out in Texas, Cole Patterson, I believe, got a story on him and announced that there are other visits that he still is taking. So I know a lot of all fans thought that as soon as he come off that visit, he canceled LSU. Okay, it's in the bag. I'm not really sure what was behind the cancellation of the LSU visit. Maybe he just had a change of heart and wanted to go somewhere else. But if I'm not mistaken, I want to say yesterday he was uh, Ole Miss or Miami, something like that.
Yeah, I
I
think
know Miami and Auburn
Tuesday
were
was
two
Ole
teams
Miss.
that Cole mentioned that he was still taking visits to. Um, but I feel like Tennessee has to feel like they're in a good spot for him. You know, he typically a kid when you talk to him about Tennessee, he lights up. Um, Now the Williams Winery kid, a little bit hard to gauge him a little bit. But definitely, and he's another one. You know, he keeps leaving that door open. I kind of almost view him and Calhoun almost in a similar manner, just because I feel like it's going to be more of a competitive recruiting battle for them two. Um, but again, he keeps leaving that door open for Tennessee to come in and make a close on them. You know, and Rodney Garner is one of the best in the business when it comes to coaching defensive line. So you know, you got that kind of coach with the type of pedigree that he has behind his name. Um, Me personally, I feel like there's a higher percentage of Tennessee getting Camarion Franklin, but definitely do not rule out them potentially pulling both of them. I just feel like as of right now, I feel like Franklin may be a bit more of a Tennessee lean than Winery, and if that's not the case, then Winery's just doing a very, very good job of keeping a lot of stuff close to his chest.
It goes back to the conversation we had on a top 5 class, right? Williams
Yes, sir.
Winery and Cam Franklin. Can you get both of those guys, or do you get one of those guys? Mike Matthews, Ron Wingo, Amari Jefferson. Do you get 2 of those guys or only one of those guys? Then you start to have to come down the recruiting board. And then also the offensive tackles, going back to what we talked about, Calhoun and Easley. Can you get one or both? So I think this staff has I see a top 10 class coming our way, but I think they can get to that top 5 class. I want to go back and talk about Franklin a little bit more, what you said there. You know, he takes the official to Tennessee, comes out, everything looks good, everything looks positive. He cancels the visit to LSU. Like you said, what I've seen is that Camarion Franklin canceled that visit. Now, does he end up taking an official during the season? I think that's something that's going to throw a wrench into this situation too. Hey, I got it right that time. Throw a wrench into the situation. These kids can take unlimited. They can take unlimited official visits. So what happens if a kid, you know, okay, we're through this busy June. We're going to make a decision in July, but guess what? Football season rolls around and, hey, I feel like taking an official. They can do that, and that definitely throws a wrench into the situation. But come back full circle. Camarion Franklin cancels the visit to LSU. Like you said, he's taken the rounds. He's been to Ole Miss, Miami, Auburn. You rattled off all 3 of those unofficially. So he comes on in town to Tennessee, takes the official on a high, and then he goes on this tour around the country with unofficial visits. I asked you in the DMs on Twitter, but I think it's a good question that you need to answer here in front of the audience. Was Camarion Franklin NIL shopping this week before he makes a decision? What are your thoughts on that?
Very strong possibility, and you know, this will also touch on what you just mentioned about taking some of these officials in the fall. You know, you mentioned he canceled his visit to LSU. Could he potentially circle back and go see them in the fall? Potentially, yes. The thing that I think people have to kind of pay attention to that is understanding that, you know, sometimes when these guys take, you know, their OVs during the fall, you know, yeah, they might be there for the full weekend, but game day is pretty much it's all business. Like, there's really not a whole lot, you know, of the recruiting discussion. It's
Right.
more or less them just kind of getting to see how the game day experience is as far as a player. I feel like for kids that are going to take the official visits in the fall like that, for those visits to truly have that big of an impact, I feel like it needs to be a school that the kid already has a prior relationship to. Otherwise, they're just going there to kind of see just a game day experience. And you know, when you're talking about a team like Tennessee, when it seems like the entire coaching staff gets involved with many of these prospects, just to truly show them how bad they're wanted and needed, you know, in Knoxville. I think a game day, unless it's just some, you know, Alabama Tennessee 52-49 game, you know, that really just blows the kid away. I think that's kind of hard to overcome. So I'm not really so much worried about when guys are pushing some of their OVs back toward the fall, unless it's a school that they've been, you know, very in tight with. But yeah, I mean, you could essentially say, you know, his official visit, you know, whether it was NIL shopping, NIL detailing, You know, that's what some people have to see with some of these kids that have taken multiple visits. A lot of what they're, what the pitches and what, they're there to see, they've already seen during the previous 4 to 5 visits.
Right.
When they continue taking those visits, that to me, I think that's when you see the situation, change lanes to where they're detailing the fine details for the kid. Like, hey, if you make this move, this is your numbers, this is what, can potentially come up, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so it's very plausible that he was either, like I say, NIL shopping or maybe even NIL detailing things, just to kind of see what his value would be. And again, touched on that earlier. And if that's the case with some of these kids, they already have relationships with Tennessee. If Tennessee truly wants the kid in that bad, they're going to find a way for them collection agencies to round up, the NIL packages for them for sure.
Well, let's jump ahead to June the 23rd, really the last big weekend of official visits. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that Boo Carter will be in town as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So he, Mr. Peer-to-Peer Recruiter, is going to be in town working his magic. We're going to run through some of these guys that are going to be in town. But, Dell, who's the headliners for you? Who are you looking at in this upcoming weekend of guys that are officially going to be in town? Who are your priority targets coming up this weekend?
I think Jordan Ross is definitely a kid that people need to pay attention to. I know I spoke with him back during the spring, and his big thing, and he said this about all of his schools that he was kind of looking at. The big thing with Tennessee, again, the authentic and the genuine personality of the coaches. Loves Coach Garner, and also he's a big academic guy. So it was a big thing for him that Tennessee had something, in his. And I'm wanting to say it was sports broadcasting may have been what he's looking at for his major, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's what he told me, and just mentioning that they had a good program for that. But again, he's a big fan of Garner. Definitely an explosive kid. His high school, they use him in various ways from the edge where one moment his hands in the dirt, next minute he's an extended outside backer, then they kind of move him on the inside to do little stunt packages and stuff with him. Very versatile kid. Would be definitely a big win to pull him out of the state of Alabama. um, as you're showing right now, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, kind of all in the mix for him. So he's another guy that is big as far as you know, prospect status goes. I mean, there's a lot of big name schools that's in after this kid. He's another kid that I'm kind of interested in seeing is the Braylon Russell, the running back out of Arkansas. Because that was kind of a talk earlier in the year is Tennessee going to go all out for the Jarrett Gibson, or are they going to try to make a 2-guy play and get Russell and Lewis? Now, they've already got Peyton, who also is scheduled to be on campus this weekend. How much does that play in? Does he get into the ear of Russell? Hey, let's come be a 1-2 punch for the future Tennessee running backs. That could potentially be a thing. I know that list is long. I just kind of went blank. I know there's like 20-something kids I think is scheduled to be coming in. William Satterwhite is another one I think people need to kind of keep their eye on. I think he's a 4-star offensive lineman as well. Another guy that's kind of been, kind of close with Tennessee and stayed in contact with, that kind of has a good feeling and a good set with Tennessee. Just another one of those 4-star linemen that they're going to pursue. As you mentioned, in case they were to miss out on the Daniel Calhoun or the Marquez Easley. Mike Matthews probably to me is the biggest headliner that's coming in as far as from a trending standpoint. Boo Carter obviously has a prior story with him and a connection with him, and that was one of the names he rambled off as some of the guys that he was planning to go after. Another guy that's going to be on campus, it probably seems to be going to be joining the peer recruiting, is Marcus Gorey. I talked to him earlier in the week, and we kind of discussed a little bit about this upcoming visit, and just kind of asked him overall who some of the guys were that he was going to be going after. And the names that he gave me, Mike Matthews, Ryan Wingo, Edwin Spillman, and a 2025 DB out of Brainerd in Martellus Carter Jr. No relations to Boo, for anybody wondering that. But definitely connected with Boo. They're all in that same inner circle here in the Chattanooga area.
I'm excited about Braylon Russell because of, you mentioned the 1-2 punch. There's two completely different style of running backs between him and Peyton Lewis. I like the size of Russell, 6'1", 225. And I think he might even be bigger than that now. He looks bigger than that. He's a big physical running back, and I'm excited about him. He's going to be making his decision July the 14th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be covering it live right here on the Talkin VAWLS Network. So put that on your calendar and get ready for that. I want to talk about wide receivers. You mentioned Mike Matthews. Somebody in the chat asked earlier, said, is Tennessee definitely looking to take 4 wide receivers? That's everything I've heard is they're taking 4. And coming out of, again, this past weekend, a guy that is trending to Tennessee, a guy that I'm scrambling, ready to make the video on, is 4-star wide receiver Braylon Staley out of Aiken, South Carolina. He's a burner, man. He's got speed. He's supposed to make the decision around the 29th or 30th. But I'm at the point he may pull the trigger quicker than that. The way I see him, he reminds me a little bit of J.J. Harrell. So J.J. Harrell decommits, ends up at Mississippi State. Best of luck playing football down there. Braylon Staley can come in and immediately replace him. So then you're looking ahead. You mentioned Mike Matthews. Amari Jefferson is also going to be in town.
Another big one
this weekend. Mike Matthews is a guy that I feel like Tennessee is in a very good spot for. You throw in the wild card of Boo Carter, which you talked about. I think that one's icing on the cake. I think it kind of flipped. Ryan Wingo, I don't know where Tennessee's at with him. It seems like he's a kid that enjoys the process. One minute it's Georgia, then it's Tennessee, then it's here, then it's there. But Amari Jefferson also going to be in town. Talk a little bit about the wide receivers. Mike Matthews, where you think? Can they land Matthews and Jefferson, or Matthews, Wingo, and Jefferson? What do you think? Are they taking 4 wide receivers in this class?
I definitely think they're looking to take 3 if they could get 4. I definitely don't think they would turn it away. Now I'm with you. The Staley kid, very impressive. Watching his film, I'm not sure that he's not faster than JJ. Now I don't know if that's due to the level of competition he's playing, where he just looks that much faster than them. But the kid, he definitely looks very explosive on film. And just to see that Tennessee jumped in the picture with that one, because it seemed like that, Clemson may have been the runaway favorite for him. And it's like Tennessee has definitely given him something to think about. And I mean, as a receiver, how could you not, consider Tennessee when you look at what the offense has done in the last 2 years? I mean, you'd almost have to just go against any bit of logic to not look at them in some form or fashion. Wingo, to me, and I'm pretty sure that this had been reported before. It may have been by On3, if I'm not mistaken. It may have came out during their little NIL event in Nashville. He kind of made the statement that he was looking to kind of, let his process play out and just kind of see where the pieces fell. That way he, kind of look at what his options left over and see where he could go and still make, a pretty immediate impact or a solid impact somewhere. And I think, let's just say, he decides to make that announcement in fall. And, let's say Tennessee does have, let's say Matthews and Staley in the boat. I think he'd be very inclined to join that, to understand that, hey, you look at those 3, you got, Matthews and Wingo's your outside guys, and your Staley kid who can, you line him up and kind of let him run that Jalen Hyatt role, and use his speed to burn people. That could be a very solid receiver class. Amari Jefferson, to me, is a very interesting situation. I actually put it in our little visitor list. It's going to be coming out probably tomorrow, I think, talking a little bit about him. A lot of people feel like, that Tennessee's just in the driver's seat because of him being committed to baseball for, Tony Vitello in the baseball program. Speaking to some people around him and then talking directly to him, I'm not so sure that that's the case. I'm not going to sit here and say that, there's a team that's definitely a leader, but, I think, Bama fans could make a case of thinking that Bama may have an edge with Amari. He's been there a couple of times, really seems to like Saban and the program, obviously. And the Alabama baseball team is not a slouch, so to me, Bama might be that dark horse in that situation. And I think this visit is big just for the simple fact where they could really, probably be able to sit down with him and be able to show him how they plan on utilizing him a lot deeper than what they probably have in the past, and really just make him understand what type of a priority he is. Definitely an explosive kid. I've had the privilege of covering him a few times last year, and that kid's a home run threat pretty much anytime the ball's in his hand. Like, I've seen the kid multiple times catch a 10-yard or less route and then turn it upfield and take it 50+ yards to the distance. Once he turns upfield, his explosion is something different. Um, Very athletic kid, and Tennessee is it's still in a good spot with him. It's not like Tennessee's playing catch up or anything. I just feel like this visit is huge in terms that this could be the weekend where they could truly lock some things down with him and potentially sway his lean if it's not still in their favor, but back to their favor.
Do you think, and this is just completely out of left field, that's what I do, just make stuff up, create narratives that aren't true. Do you think it's the love? Would you think we as a fan base, this Tennessee coaching staff need to make Amari Jefferson feel like the priority? Because all we talked about for weeks was Ryan Wingo, and then enter Mike Matthews. Now that's all we're talking about. Amari Jefferson's over here going, hey, I've been committed to Tony Vitello to come play baseball for quite a while. I'm a pretty dang good wide receiver myself. Do you think that, you're around these kids way more than I am? Do you think that factors into it at all?
I would say it probably definitely has to a little bit. I mean, you definitely don't want to be, especially an in-state kid, that's 4-star caliber as Jefferson is, two-sport athlete. You don't want to go up there and kind of feel like, you're kind of just, you're just kind of there. You know what I mean? Like, you want to feel like you're a priority. And I think that's something that Tennessee really probably plans on doing this weekend. And not to say they've not already done that, but just to go that extra mile. Because like you said, sometimes it may not matter kind of what some of the conversations are inside the facility when the kid goes home and every article he clicks on, like you said, Mike Matthews, Ryan Wingo, the Staley kid now, and all these other, the JJ Harrell kid, he's thinking, okay, it's like, okay, that's like 4 or 5 guys. And here I am sitting here, like you said, I've been loyal to the Tennessee program, committed to the baseball team, going up there visiting and, and this is all that, is coming out about it. I think some people, especially maybe even sometimes in the media, I think we probably all sometimes need to do a little bit better of a job just emphasizing how big of an in-state priority he is. Just from that perception standpoint, because again, like you said, when he's clicking all these articles and all these links and it's about all these other guys, it probably does make him scratch his head and kind of wonder where he sits with them. And then he goes to Alabama, on his visit, and they have him seated right next to Nick Saban.
Yep.
And me personally, I played ball with a kid that got recruited by Nick Saban in Alabama, and I've had the opportunity to sit at tables with Nick Saban. When that man speaks, everybody listens, and by the time he's done talking, he's definitely one of those guys. You like, man, it's like maybe I can't stand that he's at Alabama, but from a player standpoint, that is a coach you want to play for.
There's a reason he's the GOAT,
yes.
man. I hate him.
Yes.
I see you guys putting those baby Saban emojis in the chat, but he's the greatest of all time. It's not even close. Let me get a couple of super chats real quick. Jody Wooten for $5. Thank you for that tip in the tip jar. Says late entry fee. Can't wait to see where we end up. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be huge. And then also Richard Smith for $5. Thank you for the super chat. Brother says this is showing my guy Dell Dowden some love and bringing him on your platform. Everybody give Dell a follow. And if you want the best recruiting information, guys, the links are all in the description below this video. Just hit that little drop down arrow. You can figure out where to follow Dell on Twitter. And then also you can go check him out at Tennessee Rivals. That link is also in the description as well. Huge recruiting weekend coming up. We're going to continue to cover it here, but we got, every time I have somebody on for the first time, we got to talk about predictions and expectations. It's way too early, but it's fun to do it anyway. 2022, what a ride. How about just since Josh Heupel took over? Let's start there. Josh Heupel gets hired. Tell me you had to go Google his name and say, okay, who's Josh Heupel? What has he done? Were you excited? I think, Tennessee fans have been through a whirlwind of Lane Kiffin leaving, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt comes in, and just, I felt like we were at rock bottom when Josh Heupel was hired, and it's going to take 6-7 years to rebuild this thing, and enter year 2, and we go win 11 games. What were your thoughts when Josh Heupel hired? A little bit of thoughts on his first 2 seasons at Tennessee.
Well, I mean, considering the stability of what the Tennessee program was when that hire was made, it was definitely one of the more positive ones that could have taken place. I mean, there was quite a few names that was buzzing around that really had a lot of people kind of scratching their head, and then Josh Heupel's name kind of comes up, and for some of us, that again in the football media world, like we understand, like okay, what he'd done at UCF and what he'd done at Missouri, and then for people that are diehard football fans that knew what he did at Oklahoma, some even got to see a little bit of that. Um, it was very very interesting hire, and it's like okay, I think probably the first thing that people probably thought was, is this going to be another Lane Kiffin? He's going to come here for a year, if not even a full year. Oklahoma job opens up and he's going to bolt. Um, but a lot of people don't, kind of know some of the, I don't want to say bad blood, but some of the tension that kind of took place, during the shakeups of the staffs and stuff at Oklahoma. Uh, Me personally, I really don't have the fear of that happening. Unless, I think it would take a very, very substantial amount of money on a contract offer to even for him to entertain that. I think he has a pretty good thing going in Tennessee. I think he realizes that, especially now that, like you said, year two, he 11 wins, playoff contention for a portion of the year, then going to the Orange Bowl and beating Clemson, a team that's been in the playoffs every year since they've had one, which was a big win from a perception standpoint. Um, yeah, so it was kind of one of those question marks in a sense, but then you kind of see what he's doing offensively. And I think that kind of scared people too, because with the Pruitt staff, they wanted to emphasize defense so much. Everybody was like, "Man, it's like what do we have in the arsenal offensive wise?" And that's where you just truly see the genius behind Josh Heupel and what he does, because he came in and worked with what he had and made what he had work. And that's just all positive signs, because I mean, it's kind of cliche to say, but it's like if he can do that with guys that were already there, what does this program look like in year 4 or 5 when he's had a few recruiting classes come through and some of those guys are sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and those are truly guys like you mentioned that he went and evaluated, felt like was a fit for his team, bring them in, and they get that same development that we like we credit Ellerby to, developing some of these linemen that were there, like the Darnell Wright. 2 years ago, nobody would have probably thought he would even go in the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
And Ellerby comes in and works his magic, and then you see where he's at now. So it really kind of raises that question: is like what is the potential for this class once they have a few of those recruiting classes? But yeah, I think it was kind of a head scratcher for some at the beginning. If there's anybody doubting it now, I can't blame them for having Tennessee syndrome, I guess is the best way to say that. But you have to give Heupel and his staff, their credit for what they've done in just a very short amount of time of being there.
So 2022, what a ride. What a fun season. Every week I'm on here live streaming, and the stakes get higher. Every game gets bigger. And it starts going all the way back to the beginning in September and coming out undefeated and College game day at Florida, and then it just built and built and built. And you beat Alabama and end the streak and rip the goalpost down. Just so much fun in that 2022 season. 11 wins, the bowl win. Now you roll into 2023. You've lost a lot of talent to the NFL. You got a pretty tough schedule ahead of you. You look at this schedule, Dell. You see that Tennessee's got to go on the road and play Alabama. They have to go on the road and play Florida. Texas A&M, to me, is a wild card. You got to go on the road and play Kentucky. When you just look at overall at 2023, how many wins are you sitting at right now? And it's June. We got a long way to go till football season.
Well, before I even kind of answer that, I think the big thing a lot of people need to kind of keep in mind is, as successful as that season was last year and as great as it was for the fan base, people have to realize that, to a certain degree, from a perception standpoint, that team very much overachieved.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because, you made a mention of, some of the guys that they've lost, that were key components. Now granted, we know what we have coming back. Milton definitely is not Hendon, and that's not a knock to Milton. They're just two different style of players. So I think people have to kind of be careful to not, expect the same exact things out of Milton as they did Hooker, for one, because again, the play style is different. And with some of these guys coming in, into starting roles versus being a rotational guy the year before, and again, knowing that year was kind of an overachieving year, you know, anywhere from an 8 to 10 win season is still a very, very good season, considering what you're having to replace and move guys around and do this and do that. Um, I definitely think 8 wins is probably their floor. I think especially you look like you mentioned the Florida and Bama games being split, or being away games. If they can find a way to split those games, or at least win one of those, you know, Kentucky, sometimes is a hostile place for Tennessee to go into, and they're going to be mad after that game last year. Um, but yeah, I mean, you split Florida, and Bama, win one of those games. You look at the remaining of that schedule, what Georgia really the only other school on there that you really could say early on that you could say okay that they probably come into Knoxville and probably edge it out in the end just because they're still 2 and 3 classes ahead of Tennessee as far as a recruiting standpoint. They're loaded with the 4 and 5 star guys, and Kirby has Georgia playing at a very high level. So yeah, you look at that schedule, looking at it. If you were to say, okay, Tennessee beats Florida in Gainesville, loses to Bama and Tuscaloosa, and then loses to Georgia at home, that's 2 losses. Again, that's kind of in a perfect scenario, but that's very possible for this Tennessee team. People just have to, kind of let it kind of play out. Like I say, it is still early on, but I'm not so sure that this team takes as big of a step back as some may think. There again, a lot of this lies on the right arm of Joe Milton. If he continues to develop, we saw him in the Vanderbilt in the Clemson game. Nobody can sit there and say that kid was not night and day better in those 2 games alone than what they saw from him the year before as a starter, the year before as a starter before Hooker took over. So you've already seen the development that Heupel and Halsley have been able to have with him. If that continues, this could be just as an explosive offense as last year, if not even more so, because you're probably going to see a lot more deeper balls thrown by Milton versus, running around like Hooker did. Because, I mean, when you could throw a football, 75, 80 yards, there's not really a spot on the field that's bad to throw from.
Yeah, I think a lot's going to be on the offensive line too, just because of what you said.
Yes,
Joe's a different guy than Hendon, and he's not going to be able to escape the pocket. I like him in designed runs. Rocky Top Tom for 5. Thank you for the super chat. Forgot my door fee. This is a great stream. Joe won't stumble. The O-line and defense are key to this year, though. We're only year 3 of
Definitely
coach.
would agree with that too.
Go Big Orange. Thank you, Rocky Top Tom. Appreciate the super chat. Yeah, there's I'm excited about this season. I think I'm at 9 wins right now. Like you said, I think floor 8, ceiling 10. And if you're right around in there, and Coach Jay that I stream with on here all the time always says, every time we're having this conversation, he's like, yeah, but it depends on how, like don't freak out if they lose 8 games, but how did they lose? Or if they win 8 games, but how did they lose the 4? That's always a big part of it. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the stream tonight. Got to get Dell out of here by 8 o'clock. Had a lot of fun. Maybe we could do this again, get him back on here some throughout the season, talking a little football instead of just recruiting. But I will probably not make a video in the morning. I will probably promote this live stream again, let people come back, give it a watch in the morning. A lot of you guys like to watch content early in the morning with a cup of coffee. So we will probably let this one sit. Again, go check out Dell. All the links are in the description. Check him out on Twitter. Also, go check him out over at Tennessee Rivals, doing all kinds of coverage, all things Tennessee recruiting. Dell, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. It's been a good time.
Thank you for having me on. We'll definitely do it again.
All right, buddy. We're going to get out of here. He's Dell. My name is Boogie Bentley. This is the Talkin VAWLS Network. Go Big Orange.
That we call home.